I'm gonna dive right in and just say, hey, look, you represent more crowdfunding, more reggae companies, and we'll let you define what reggae is to everybody who's on, than anybody else that I know of in America. And I think not only is there power in that, but there's a deep seated understanding of what's happening in the world, right? And what's happening with money in the world. So maybe first of all, just tell people what a broker dealer is. Tell them kind of what you do, brother.
Thanks, Dutch. So Etan Butler here. I'm the chairman of Dalmore Group. We are a FINRA and SEC registered broker dealer. A broker dealer really is a regulated entity, and in this case, it's a regulated entity which helps companies raise capital in the U.S. in a compliant, regulated manner. Right. So things like due diligence are done. Things like bad actor checks are done on the issuing entity and the officers and directors. We're looking at advertising materials, et cetera, really designed to ultimately help protect investors as best as we possibly can, and to have an entity that's responsible for making sure the wrong people aren't participating in this, both from a issuer perspective and also from a investor perspective.
Yeah, in Etan's experience, we first met each other at crowdfunding week about a year ago, and we had a great time. And I'd been hearing about Etan from other industry thought leaders and other industry experts. And as I got a chance to meet him and we started diving kind of deep, we found there was a lot of shared beliefs in how you approach life, how you approach business, how you approach investing, how you approach investors. And so that's where we started to kind of bond and connect. And so our upcoming, Invest Well Summit, I asked Etan to come and be one of our speakers, because I don't think there's people that know more about what's going on in the world, than Etan. But I also think he has a deep insight into decisions that you should make, not make, thoughts you should have, not have, when you're looking at companies, when you're looking at businesses, because he's asked to protect, when you're a broker dealer, you have to protect your reputation with a sword, a bazooka, and a needle, right? And so you have to do everything you can to keep your brand and yourself safe, because the SEC and FINRA aren't just looking at Etan, but they're looking at all hundreds of companies that he represents. And if just one of those companies starts doing something out of bounds, then that affects him and affects his reputation. So, talk a little bit about, some of the companies, some of the businesses that have come to you, as their source, for compliance and regulation and really help in seeing their path when it comes to crowdfunding.
So first, we've been at this for quite a while. We were founded in 2005, right? Which is unique in that it's, we've been at this for about 18 years. So, we spent the first 10 years really focused on providing institutional investment banking services to companies. And then since the Jobs Act, President Obama's Jobs Act of 2012, we made a shift to helping companies raise capital primarily online at scale through some of these Jobs Act securities exemptions, which were intended to better democratize access to investment opportunities on the one hand, right? The not yet accredited investors, which represent well over 90% of the population, the average American, really didn't have an efficient way to participate in investment opportunities. It was really reserved for the rich, right? The accredited investors. And at the same time, you had all these founders, right, that were reliant on getting the attention of Wall Street investment bankers to move their business and their dreams forward. What the Jobs Act did for them and for minorities and for female-owned businesses who still have an embarrassingly low allocation percentage from venture capital, under 2% collectively. It gave them the ability to have a platform to say, I don't need to wait on you. I'm going to take my opportunity and I'm going to go out to my people, to my community. I'm going to build a community. I'm going to advertise and promote this in a very fair way. So it really leveled the playing field. We got involved in Regulation A in late 2018 or 2019 or so. Keep in mind, Regulation A, while in my opinion it's a superior exemption for companies to consider. Why? Because it lets you raise capital from anyone over the age of 18, pretty much internationally, right? Not just accredited investors, right? And the shares that investors are buying are also freely tradable. You don't have to wait a year to be able to sell them. We've onboarded close to 300 Regulation A issuers at this point. That's a significant percentage of the number of offerings that have applied for Reg A. So we've been able to observe what's working, what's not working. We've been able to observe what strategies issuers are utilizing and why, and the impact that they're making, right? And the ability to build a large community like you guys have, where everyone could participate. It's not just limited. And so so as far as which communities and which issuers we've come across, all different types, from very vanilla real estate investment trusts all the way to psychedelics and cannabis companies on the other, and everything in between. Reg A is a tool. These exemptions are a tool that allow for issuers to raise capital at whatever structure and valuation metrics that they want to go to market with.
Now, how much do you think the Jobs Act was a response to 2007, 2008, Bernie Madoff, right? And those kind of things. How much do you think that was a response to that? Because when I look at it and I look at the timing and I look at the things, I kind of feel like it's kind of a direct response against private unregulated companies, and what that can do to people.
It really is a way to support the entrepreneur spirit that America is so well known for, to support innovation, to give more tools for more entrepreneurs to have a fair path to raise capital to support what they're doing. And that's going to create more business opportunities. It's going to create more jobs. And hopefully it'll create more wealth for more people who could participate in companies that otherwise they'd be blocked out of participating in. Right. So I think it's a real win. So I think, yes, I think it was in response to a lot of things. But primarily where I think it really comes from is capital formation. It's right for the American entrepreneur to really have a mechanism for them to take control of their own destiny and to have a shot, right? And then the investors will decide what they like. But this really levels out the playing field.
Yeah, I mean, there really wasn't a place for an average investor. You look at like there's that TV show that came out. I think it's called Super Pumped, right, with Uber, right? And there really wasn't a place for the average American, for the average person. And I'm not. This isn't a stamp of approval for Super Pumped or Uber, but there wasn't a place for an investor to be a venture capitalist. There wasn't a place for a normal person to be an angel investor, right? And today, Sally and Joe, who are walking down the street as a couple, holding hand in hand, right, have an ability, have a place where they can take a small percentage, right, of their investment, of their wealth, of their retirement, and say, hey, let me go after some high unlimited return, high risk type of thing. Let me go after and let me invest in another small business, right? And maybe I can get a 10x, a 20x, a 30x return, right? And those are the kind of things that can happen when you invest seed capital or different rounds of early capital into startup businesses and startup companies. And I thought that was pretty cool. For me, when I first started, the battle for a small business owner and entrepreneur is a hard life, because when you make the decision from going very, very small, right, and making good money, but you want to make a greater impact, you want to make a bigger difference, right? But the struggle with HR and the struggle with compliance and the struggle with then increasing your advertising, then increasing your sales, then increasing your deals and increasing your investments, increasing these transactions. For me, there was this gap, and whether it was the attorneys I talked to in the beginning or it was the auditors that I talked to in the beginning, everybody just said, you're way too small, right? Even banking was a challenge. I remember calling bank after bank after bank and saying, we're going to open a REIT, we're opening a real estate investment fund, and them saying, we don't want to touch that, right? We don't want to touch an investment vehicle, way back then. And so finding a home, right, to just give them money what was challenging, because we had, raving fans and we had a lot of investors, but we could not get through, right, without the extreme battle. And it was about a 2-year battle, right, to become a Reg A. It was a 2-year battle to become compliant, 2-year battle to go through audits, a 2-year battle to get, submitted and then qualified with the SEC. But it's not just that 2-year battle. On the other hand, that's just the qualification part of it. But on the other hand, running an existing business, growing an existing business, building an existing business, right, and the entrepreneurial fight and the American dream to be able to establish it. And that's really, a big part of this story is, the Jobs Act is about, building American dreams, right? And it's about whether it's the investments or it's the startup businesses and the startup companies, right, that are out there, right? And I don't know that I would have imagined this quickly we'd be at the thousands of investors we are, or we'd be making as much of an impact we are. But without the Jobs Act, I don't know that we could have, right? We would have been a great company. We would have existed. We would have helped investors, but we couldn't have helped everyday middle-class Americans. We couldn't have helped people who are just making their first investments for the first time. And that is extremely frustrating to me, that limitation. I think I kind of grew up, if you ever saw the movie Gattaca, I don't know if you ever saw that when you were young, right? And those of you who've never seen it, you should go see it. Gattaca is a movie where essentially a young man had to change how his DNA looked to the world so he could get opportunities and open up windows, right? And that was like a movie of origin for me, because I looked at that and the irritation that I would get that society, or the way society is built, or the system of society is built, can hold a person down and hold a person back. I don't know that I had any greater frustration, than that when I looked at life. And maybe it's part of, I probably saw it in my early college years. And I was also probably a person who, having lived on my own at 16 and stuff, felt like, some of the deck was stacked against me at that point. And like I was going to break through it, like with dynamite and a freight train, to figure out how I was going to, not be held down or not be held back. And so I look at the Jobs Act as kind of the epitome of that lesson for everyday people, but understanding what is good, what is not good, understanding what to invest in, not to invest in, what the different types of investments are. Because investing in me, right, is and RADD is very different than investing in Galliano and Boxable, right? It's also very different than investing in collectibles or investing in other vehicles. And there's a difference between a company that's just starting today and a company that is in the more advanced stages of being a business and want to raise capital to be able to grow and expand. So maybe talk to people about some of the different, phases or the different stages of companies that you've seen out there, or the different kind of types that you've seen.
Yeah. So, first, the private markets in the U.S. are way bigger than the public markets. There's over 30 million private companies in the U.S. Less than 1%, well less than 1% are public, and a lot of wealth has been generated in the past through private investments. And the average American, if they weren't accredited, wouldn't really have that much of an opportunity to participate. And even if they were, in the past, it was, an uncle comes to you with a real estate deal, or a neighbor does. Everyone chips in 25 or 100 and hope, and you pray that it works out somehow. And you just kind of go on because he did it and I'll do it. Yeah, I'm in. Everyone passes the hat around like that. Doesn't always work out so well. And oftentimes there's a lot of strings attached to those types of things. The Jobs Act, it did so much in that it enabled these private opportunities, entrepreneurs who were launching these private opportunities, to take them out to the masses. But it also added another level of transparency through the need to get audited financials, through the need to do so through a regulated entity. It wasn't just you get a sub doc and you pass the hat around, everyone chips in $100,000. This is, audited financials, due diligence is done, SEC qualification for Reg A, and there's disclosures that are made that are required to be made. So investors hopefully have more information at their fingertips to assess. We've come across a lot of companies over the last 3-4 years. Private companies, public companies. Again, these exemptions ultimately are tools that anyone could really use. to raise capital for a startup business that, is a new co that hopefully might succeed going forward. Right. You look at what the founders have done in the past. You look, are they filling a need that resonates to me? Does this look like something I want to participate in? Okay. Do I want to make an investment in it with the understanding I might lose? Most business opportunities historically lose, right? The majority of companies don't succeed. There's a value in a track record. There's a value in participating with companies that have already done it, right? Year after year. And there's all different types of things to invest in, right? There's much higher risk startups, and then there's very boring and vanilla REITs, right? That'll generate hopefully consistent, returns to you, way more than you're making in the bank.
I think you just called me very, very boring and genetic, bro.
I call boring and genetic sexy, personally. I think vanilla is sexy, right? I think that, because, hopefully it adds, a different element than rolling the dice on something like a startup would. So people.
I would literally say that there's actual proof in what you're saying that vanilla is sexy. And what I would say is there's an actual Facebook group, and one of my team was telling me about that this week, that she joined it, right? And she's in this group, and she was talking about how literally the group is completely built on the making and the use of vanilla. And it's not like a couple hundred people, it's like hundreds of thousands of people are in this group, and like one post there's 900 comments, right? Inside this group, and it's pretty funny that it's all about vanilla on Facebook. Maybe we just gave them a little promotion and they'll get some extra users from hearing it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing is there's the boring, right? Isn't bad, right? And I think it's fascinating. I saw an ad the other day, right? And it said invest in the most boring investment you'll ever invest in your life. Yeah. And
people have a need for that. Yes, there may be a portion of my portfolio that I want to make more risky investments in. Hopefully 1 out of 10 hit. And then there's what do I do? How else do I want to allocate? My income, my wealth. There's definitely many opportunities today, and as a result, there's a lot of noise and a lot of distraction. So as an investor, what do I do? What should I rely on? I'm being marketed to, and you really want to be a part. You really want to do your diligence. You want to see the team behind it, what their values are, what their track record has been, what their reputation is. I mean, that's what I would be looking for.
Now, but I looked at the ad, right, and I'm thinking to myself, farming, right, is literally to me one of the most fascinating industries in the entire thing. And so they just said one of the most fascinating things that I think that exist is boring, because I'm sitting here looking, like 2 seconds before that I was looking at one of our newborn calves being born, right? And I'm watching, one of our newborn calves being born on one of our farms, and I'm sitting here waiting for it to stand up. Like I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting for it to finally stand up. And I'm like, how's that? First of all, watching birth, right? I don't know if there's anything right more real in the world, but then watching it stand up for the first, it's amazing that animals are birthed and they're standing within minutes oftentimes, and like we're born and like we're in the crib for 6 months before we're even rolling around. So it's pretty different way that they're in the wild, that they have to stand up and protect themselves than what we do here. So
it doesn't seem like a very boring thing to go and encounter, right? It's using the word boring to convey something that might feel a bit more predictable than something that is, catches your attention and, it isn't necessarily as grounded or as.
I'm definitely throwing a boring ad out in the next week. So just to be clear, those of you watching, you'll see a rad is boring, right? And that'll really mess people up because it's rad, right? And then boring at the same time. Rad can be boring, just to see how that does out there, which is cool. Talk to me about, the journey of being a broker dealer, because that's not an easy journey either.
Yeah. We got started many years ago, about 18 years ago. Prior to that, I was a day trader, right? I was, trading portfolio of stocks. And then I wasn't a very good trader, unfortunately. I was very emotional and not very technical and very impulsive, which is not a good ingredients for becoming making a living on trading stock. But I love the culture and I love being around it. And I realized that, who was really consistently doing well here? It was the broker. It was the house that was facilitating this, able to be around it. So it made more of a move towards that direction. Also facilitating proprietary capital to back other traders, and that got into black box algorithmic trading. Development at the time, automated trading systems, and then it got into investment banking. And at that time, we Oscar and I, my partner for over 20 some odd years, founded Dalmore, really to provide execution services to hedge funds and also to raise capital for different strategies and hedge funds that we were working with at the time. And that was the beginning of it. And interestingly, I never really had a job. I was always very entrepreneurial. I always hustled. I shoveled snow. I mowed lawns. I did what I had to do. But I was always very entrepreneurial myself. And that's one of the reasons why I love what I do right now. It's like, because I can relate to all of these entrepreneurs that we encounter. I know what they're going through. I know the struggles. I know the pain. I know the ups and downs. I feel like I know what they need. And that really goes into how we develop and design, some of the offerings that Dalmore offers issuers, right? Both on the services side, on the broker dealer side, and also on the technology side. We're obsessed with what are the best tools, what's the best and most cost-effective way to do this, that's most predictable. And that's where we hold ourselves. And so, hopefully that's appreciated by people, and that's certainly the objective.
Yeah. I mean, I sit here and I listen to you and I think of the things that, like, as an investor or as a businessman, like, I kind of avoid, right, at all possible turns. And I'd love to hear some of yours too. So when I heard the word black box, right, in business sense, lots of times a black box is something that, and I know that's not what you were talking about with black box, but in a business sense, lots of times a black box is something that a business depends on that's completely out of their control, right? And I avoid those, that my business is reliant or my business is dependent on something that we can't control. And if that thing disappeared, my business might go out of business. And so when you're looking at companies and businesses, I would avoid those things. Another one is, if I can't understand it, I won't invest in it, right? If I don't have, if I can't really truly understand the process and system. Like the other day, and somebody goes to MIT, there's an automatic stamp that you're smart, right? And the other day I got sent this AI thing that was for correlating, right, AI data and being able to give people answers from information and data and different things. And I guess intrinsically I kind of understand what AI and data and correlating data means, but can I understand that this person versus this person has a better business or a better product or a better different thing? And I said, to myself, that's probably too complicated for us to even consider being something we would look at, and investing. And so, those are two of mine. I think the third one I'd say is drama. Anytime in a business I see that there's drama, right? I don't see that there is a drama-free, and it's not every business already is intrinsically has enough headaches, and enough fires and enough work that you have to control and work through, right? For example, when we went through rapid growth, right? Making sure that when people no longer worked for us, right, they left in a positive way, right? And because there's natural when you're going through rapid growth and you go from 35 to 150 people, right? You're going to go through some real changes, and you're going to have positions you create that aren't really needed, and you need to eliminate those quickly. And there's just different things with that. And then maintaining culture, that in itself can be enough drama. So if your business has drama on top of that, it's going to be almost impossible to overcome. So, those are three of mine. What are some of your things when you look at an investment or business that you avoid?
I try to align. I look at life more from a spiritual and eternal perspective. So I identify with my soul, perhaps more so than I do with my physicality, which is temporary and here now and gone tomorrow. And so what I'm acquiring is wisdom, understanding. What I'm acquiring is what I'm giving to others, what I'm doing for others. My desire, so I tend to look at relationships from a spiritual perspective. And so, I like to work with people who are ethical. I like to work with people who have good track records, and who are, who align what they're doing with something greater. I mean, when I was looking at your site before, and I saw like right up top, you incorporate incredible charities that so many Americans could relate to. That, what does that mean? It's like it's clearly part of your identity. So that's what I enjoy. I'm getting older, and I'm now 48, right? I remember some days I feel like I'm 18, some days I feel like I'm 90. It depends on the morning. But you realize that you have very limited time left here, years, months, and you don't get a warning. No one's going to give you a warning. It could be tomorrow, right? Who I spend my time with and what I spend my time on is becoming more and more, I'm more and more aware of it and selective in that. I also like to work with people who do not limit themselves, and who don't have a consciousness that if someone else comes, there's less for me. I like to look at the world and the universe as ever expanding and unlimited, and that applies even in the illusion of time and space that makes everyone really worry about themselves. I like working with folks that see things in a lot bigger way. And perhaps most important, I have my wife and I have advisors, and I welcome and oftentimes rely on and look for their intuition as well.
Gut's incredibly important, right? And
yeah,
when you become effective at listening to your gut, when you become effective at listening to your inner voice, it makes a massive difference, and it's something that is an intrinsic hard thing. Amy, my partner, when her gut says no on something over the years, I've learned no. When my wife Vanessa says no on something, I've learned no, right? And because I'm absolutely a yes person, right? I'm gonna take it on. I'm gonna take the next piece. I'm gonna take the next mission. I'm gonna take the next challenge. I'm gonna create chaos. And so I surround myself with people that are incredibly good, one at structure and procedure and cleaning and can handle chaos, but number two, people that have strong gut instincts, and that maintain a path, right? And I think that's one of the things I've learned over businesses over the years. If they don't have a clear, concise path, right? If they don't have a direction and then not a non-openness, right? But an openness with a path makes critical sense to me, when it comes to a business. And I would say one thing for sure that I was thinking while you were talking, Etan, is in a world where people have different faiths, right, and different beliefs. You and I have different faith, right? We have different beliefs when it comes to our faith, right? We find so much synergy and so much congruency, right, with one another, and so much respect of one another. And I just think that's the way, to me, the world should be, right? Is that respect factor. Literally one of the great founding parts of America was religious freedom, right? And it's critical to what our nation is. And so I find it fascinating as I hear you go through many similar things, and maybe talk about some of them in a different way, but it's a parallel belief, right, when it comes to some of your decision making, to exactly what my belief is, right, when it comes to decision making. And I think when you've seen enough companies and enough businesses, and you've grown enough companies and businesses, and for me, all the years of consulting companies and businesses before we began and built our investment vehicles, right, is just the patterns, right? And the patterns are consistent. And if you can hear the truth of the pattern, it can allow you to see things that haven't happened yet. It can allow you to see down the road of what's going to exist and what's going to happen, for companies and businesses. And I'm not saying that I can tell the future, right? I didn't bring out my crystal ball, but the patterns are very real, and very important. Talk a little bit, for you, how much, your faith has had an impact on how you approach business and how you approach the game.
Tremendous impact. It starts with, aligning with divine principles. Let's charity, for example, right? A person, and that's very tied into, what you do for a living. If you look at yourself as just a recipient, a cup, that's I want success. I want God, give me more. Eventually your cup's going to fill up, and it's not necessarily a blessing to pour more in if it's overflowing, because you're not able to, your vessel it's full. If you make holes on the bottom of your cup so that what comes in is also supporting, then you're bringing godliness into this world. You're acting as a conduit of blessing, not just a limited recipient. And as a result, your bandwidth increases tremendously. But you're not just doing it for yourself, for your ego, for your own enrichment. Your joy is not just getting another car, getting another house. Your joy is bringing mercy and kindness and support to others. And that creates that circular flow. That's how a person's in flow. It's less about me. I don't exist. I'm here. I'm gone tomorrow. What do I have at the end of the day? I have what I'm bringing into this world. I bring in godliness. So I look at what I do. So charity is one of them, right? At least 10% of what comes in is not mine. It's not mine. It's not mine. I'm a guardian of it. And they say that no one goes poor by giving charity. Try it. It doesn't make sense, right? It's like, I worked hard for this and I deserve this, and they should go get a job. It's America, but open yourself up, try it. It's tremendous blessing comes from receiving for the purpose of sharing, right? And it frees you from that. So that's one example of how, we try to merge, what we do. And just transparency and honesty. It goes into our approach of how we onboard clients. It's not salesy. It's not, we focus on numbers, we focus on facts, we focus on what's happening. And if anything, we discourage people to go down a path that might lead to a challenging time 6 months from now, right? And that's the key. Karma, it builds up, and there's,
and it moves cameras.
It moves cameras. It does. See, wow. So that's kind of how I would sum it up, I guess.
I mean, when you speak passionately, like you are right there, right? It gets me fired up too. Cause as I look at my life, I went through, such a journey of, I didn't grow up with any financial responsibility whatsoever, right? Not taught any financial responsibility, not taught, anything. I didn't know what a credit score was until I was in my 20s, right? I probably didn't have even have a line of credit until I think my first line of credit might have been buying my first house. There's a decent chance that the first investment property that I ever invested into might have been my first line of credit in my life. And so, it's kind of fascinating when I hear you talk about the journey. And I remember, when I met my wife, right? One of the things, that was important to her, right, was because I met her in a business environment, an entrepreneurial environment, right? And I hadn't been to church, for many years. And my wife said to me, "Well, I'm going to church this Sunday, and if you want to go on another date, that means, you're coming to church, this Sunday." And that was awesome, right? She knew who she was. She knows what her foundation was as a person. But for me, when it came to the money conversation, and this is once we were married, right? We were already married at this point, and she was talking about, the giving, to our faith and tithing and those kind of things, right? And as an investor, I kind of started looking at the compounding effect, and I said, well, what can 10% do, right? If I compound it for 10 years at the kind of rate of returns that I get. And I said, the church isn't going to compound the money, right? And I looked at it from a purely, secular, right, financial perspective. And I said, and I'll have so much more to give them if I get just able to invest it, right? And I went and met, what was his name? I want to say his name's, Rich Martindale, right? He's a commercial real estate, investor here in Southern California, developer. And I went and met with him as a leader within the church. And him and I sat down and we talked through this. And literally what you just said, right? Nobody ever goes poor giving to charity. Nobody ever goes poor in tithing, right? Nobody ever goes poor from providing more abundance into the world. And it's such a fascinating conversation, because I remember growing up and looking at, the people with a 5,000 square foot house, or growing up and saying, like, those neighborhoods over there across the tracks. Cause to me, I literally had to cross railroad tracks to see, wealthier neighborhoods, and I would look at them and I would look at them and I don't know that I had jealousy in the sense that but I would look at them and seek understanding. Right? What is different here? What is changed? What has shifted? What has happened for these individuals? And there was a part of me early on that was like, well, the same thing that at one point we had a teacher from my kids say to me at one point. She goes, I asked her to throw something away, right? And she goes, "Okay, rich guy," right? And I asked her, I was like, who do you think I am? I mean, I didn't think of myself that way. And she goes, and she, I thought I had come from abundance and thought I'd come from wealth and generational wealth. And I'd come from, a legacy of entitlement and wealth, because I had asked her, but it was a joking thing, because she was, we had a healthy relationship. But at the same time, like for me, that journey of going from zero understanding, and all of the emotional relationship with money and all the damage that I had experienced and been through with money. And then my faith kind of was one of the great bridges for me, right? And overcoming my relationship with money. And then my own beliefs, though, when it came to finances, were very different than some of the spiritual leaders of my faith, how they taught money, right? And because it was not an abundance teaching, right? But I believed, from the Bible, it's an abundance teaching. And so when I looked at it, that's how I saw, money was from an abundant standpoint, and what it was capable of doing and what it's capable of creating. And so you're right. You're so dead right, though, when like the cup is filling, then the whole responsibility of the cup goes one of two ways, right? There's the darkness of hoarding and utilizing it and literally it's almost a scary thing. And when I see that in people, I can see it almost instantly now when there are those individuals and man, I steer away with like a 10-foot pole. But when it's giving and it's providing, it's incredible about how it continues to provide more.
100%. It's in flow, and there's an amazing teaching in Ethics of Our Fathers. It's a ancient Jewish text. The question is posed: who is rich? Who's rich? Who's wealthy? And the answer is he who is happy with his lot. Person who's happy with his portion. That's the definition of rich. If you're happy with what you have. And also another thing is, charity is not just limited to money. They say that the highest form of giving is giving someone wisdom.
Talents.
It's giving them understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Because the understanding sometimes might be that everything is happening for the good. We don't understand anything. We don't understand we can't explain sickness, illness. We're limited. We were created. We came into this world. We're not God. We're God's within us. We're part of it. It's all one. But it's you can never explain some of the things that happen in this world. But you could also reach a level of understanding that somehow this is all for us. It's all happening for us. It's all for the good. So yes, I'm going to suffer through difficult times. Yes, there's going to be ups and downs in life, and I could get affected by it, but I'm not going to get depressed. I'm not going to lose hope. Because I'm seeing the bigger picture here. And person will realize as they're getting older, real happiness does come from helping other people. You're not going to get, you could be alone in your couch at home, watching your flat screen, ordering food, have everything. You could sleep in one bed that night. You could have one dinner that night. And you know what? You're going to be lonely. And, but true happiness really comes from receiving for sharing, for increasing your bandwidth, to become a worthy recipient of that. That's real happiness. The rest is grip. The rest is ego. The rest is that human nature or animalistic nature of I need to worry about myself, and that's it, only myself, and that's not sustainable, and that leads to problems. It leads to disease. It leads to war. So so that's an important characteristic in people that I like to associate with, be friendly with, and do business with. Is you want your environment, your work environment, especially in relationships that have a lot of friction and back and forth, not just experience. And so you want to have people that you enjoy, that you respect, because you're both working towards helping each other succeed. And knowing that you're like-minded and you're helping people, it's really helpful for the relationship in that way.
I agree so much, right? For me, the listening part, right, to path, and the listening part through prayer and listening through daily conversation, right, is fascinating to me, because there are so many things that I've done or actions I've taken over the years, and I would sit there and I'd go look backwards and I would say, where did that even come from? Right? Where did that information come from? Where did that knowledge come from? Where did that idea and concept come from? Where did that business that I chose to walk away from come from? Where did those people I chose not to be in business with come from? Where did this model of raising capital, not having ever experienced it, right, come from? Right. And so, I listen so much. And like with my team and my people, the contributors to our mission, every day, I listen on the right way to lead, right, and the right way to be engaged. And sometimes I feel myself, off path, or I feel myself off direction, and I feel, some of the pessimism, or I feel some of the negativity, right, start to creep in. And I realize when that's happening, I'm off path, right? I'm not being present with my business, or I'm not being present with my people, or I'm not being present with my family and my wife, right? And the moment I go back to that, I feel the ease, right, of what we're doing, and the synergy of direction. And I'm not saying that there isn't hard fought knowledge, experience, and wisdom, but at the same time, there's wisdom beyond what I know that I've been able to just gain from effort and from work. And I don't know how much of that is a part of your path or not, but that part of it's a huge part for me.
Yeah, it kind of puts everything into perspective, right? It aligns our life. We wake up in the morning and we have our career, what we're working on, our business. We have our family, we have other interests, and that it brings a common thread throughout the day to have, what are you about? What are you living for? What's really important? And it's important to ask these questions to ourselves, and that because that allows for us to be conscious. Right. I find I try every day. I take a walk. I take like a 7-mile walk, to clear my head, either early in the morning or after my day, late, sometimes twice. And I just kind of have a conversation with God, in my own language. I pray 3 times a day in a more formal way, but that moment, that opportunity, that hour of just talking to God like he's my friend, that here listening to me, I fess up with where I went off. I ask for guidance and clarity. I express gratitude for the things I have, for my health, for my wife, for my work, for everything. Critical. It's critical, because when you open up your mouth in truth, I believe that you're met right away with wisdom and truth and understanding, and it's available for all of us. It's really it's being present in that. We have a tendency to go on overdrive, go on autopilot in life, and let our emotions take over. But it's there's another way. I think there's a more evolved way to go through this experience. It's going to go in cycles, right? It doesn't, you look at an EKG, you don't want to see a flat line, or, that's life. It's going to be, you're going to have, it's opportunities to get stronger are going to present themselves. And if you look at it in the right way, and you go through it enough times, you realize what's in front of you. Just like you need to exercise and work out to rip fiber, go through something uncomfortable to achieve a greater level of comfort. That's life is filled with that.
Man, such a great message, right? And I love what you're sharing. I was as I came out of Claire, if this is your first time listening to our podcast, right? This is not a podcast where we're always deeply diving into God and faith. But what I love about Etan and I is, right, this is a conversation that we both are very in agreement with on how to run a business. We're very much in agreement with how to be in life. And I think when companies and business have a greater answerability in the world, right, I think it's so critical to the overall mission, right? And I look at my sons and how I want them to see and how I want them to live in this world, right? And raising them in faith and raising them, the way that I raised them. And I look at the end of the day, I have a greater purpose and a greater reason, right? For I want them to see me living my dream and living my passion in every single day. And I look at the other things that have created answerability, for me in life, make such an important thing. And so when I talk with founders and I'm looking at whether I would invest or not invest into their companies and business, or I look at real estate, investment vehicles, and I do a deep dive, right? And then granted, the problem is a lot of people can hide this, right? They can cover it up and they can give a false sense of who they are, right, to the public. If you dive deep, you'll always uncover it. But if you don't dive deep, then you won't, right? If there's not openness and transparency, right, in the vehicle, and that's one of the, I think, beautiful parts about Jobs Act is if you're going to be a raising capital person, there's got to be open and transparency with your financials, and open and transparency with your processes and procedures for running your business. I don't know where I was going there. I got lost in my own yapping.
No, it's kindred spirits, man. It's always exciting to come across others that look at life in a similar way. And, it doesn't make a difference what your approach is, what your religion is. Your religion is based on who you were born with, too. It's where you live in the world. But it comes down to if looking at things from a broader perspective, more than meets the eye. To look at life as being even bigger, making room for it to be even bigger than our five senses. To me, what's beyond the five senses is so much more interesting and so much more real than what is limited to the five senses. So,
I mean, faith was definitely part of the founding principles, right, of the United States, right, of our country. And I was having this discussion, last week, in which I found fascinating is, a great many, kings, were dictators, back in the day, and they forced, faith on different people. And like one of the things they were talking about in one of our pastor's sermons was Josiah, right? And they were going through different things and his push of people back to faith. And then after, he was no longer in power, how that started to dissipate again, right? And I said, one of the great gifts I think our founding fathers gave us here in the U.S. is that religious freedom, because then when somebody, chooses a faithful path, they've done it from freedom. They've done it from personal choice, and that is long lasting and that is pure. And when people are not allowed to do it or not able to do it from choice, right, it is temporary and can even be superficial sometimes, right, when it's forced.
Dangerous, destructive. That's yeah, for sure. I mean,
I don't know if it's created the most wars in the history of the world, but it's definitely created a lot of the conflict, and a lot of the wars in the history of the world have been the forcing of faith, right, or the attempt to force faith on other people and other societies. And it's obviously the Middle East's great conflicts are a lot of them are from forced faith, right? And I know some of the world wars were about territory gain, and when you had people like Napoleon and Hitler and stuff, it wasn't so much about faith, even though Hitler used faith as a weapon, right? Which is not the purpose Anybody who's ever using faith as a weapon, they're wrong. Just to be clear, right? That's I don't care what faith you are in the world. That's something I think any red-blooded American can agree with, right? So, and all Americans are red-blooded, to be clear, right? And nobody bleeds green or purple, right? So, in the modern world, see, that's actually calling people red-blooded is actually can be, you don't cross any lines, right? In the modern world of vernacular, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. It's one of the things you could still say, I guess. Right.
Cool. Yeah. So let's give people some closing thoughts on our industry, right? And I'm so excited about the Investment Wealth Summit and what's coming with that. I'm so excited to be a part of the Alternative Investment Association and giving people this path. I've literally written an entire book that'll be published this year called Money Shackles that is all about alternative investing and all about our industry and the systematic approach of what society tells people to do with money and what really creates abundance and wealth and those kind of things. So, give people some closing thoughts on I think just a relationship with money. Just talk a little bit about money, because it can be so ugly, but it's not, right? It just is. It's an inanimate object that can be a utilized tool. So but talk about it a little bit.
Sure, you force yourself to give charity. Set yourself up automatically. Whenever you get your paycheck, put 10% into a separate account. Create a separate account or a donor advised fund. You could do it if you want to be fancy, but get into the habit of doing it. Look at yourself as bigger than just you. You're a conduit. You're a partner with the divine, with the world, and the world needs you. And so I would say that. Also, we're at a time right now where we have as a country, as individuals, we have the most debt. Things are coming out. We're bombarded with product, with what our neighbors have, with what our kids need. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and feel like you need to spend all your money and you're always behind the eight ball. You're always living paycheck to paycheck. Force yourself to first be more humble. Even in the midst of not having enough money, give 10% away and see what happens. And then I'm going to ask to take another 10% or whatever it might be and put it away for yourself into something that might grow for you down the road, right? And I know how difficult it is for people to do that, and I know that there's obviously risk involved in any investment that is made. So you obviously have to be careful about that. But yeah, you're asking me about money. I think people need to be thinking about setting themselves up with security down the road, right? And so the question is, how should they do that? What do they do? Hopefully the Jobs Act, hopefully, companies like RADD, like others that are good people that are doing their best to bring good opportunities out there, for consideration. I mean, that's a good place to start. So that's our approach. It's get into alignment and also, move away from this culture of always needing what's next, always racking up more and more credit card debt. Move that into let your money work for you. Don't be a slave to, what you think you need and using up all your money for those purposes.
Yeah, I love that conversation. Shaquille O'Neal, I was watching some of his videos and I actually, followed some things that he shared at one point in time, right? And so I go a little bit different and that, obviously build my own path, but I'm like, take 25%, right? And invest it towards the future, right? Take a huge chunk, right? At this point, and granted, this is because I've been incredibly blessed financially, right? Almost 75% of all my income goes towards, right, the categories of future tithing, charities, and future wealth, and we actually live off of only 25% of our income as a family and stuff. And so, it's kind of radical, right, in the sense. But I tell people, one of the things I tell people all the time is take a chunk of that money and invest in yourself. Invest in yourself over and over and over. Invest in your ability to find peace of mind. Invest in your ability to gain wisdom. Invest in your tools and your skills from a money standpoint. Invest in your tools and your skills and your career and what your passion and what your direction is, right? And make that constant investment in yourself, and that compounds over the years in an incredible way. And if you want to break free and you want to create, some freedom, putting that into yourself. And so many people struggle with putting it into themselves. They struggle with deserving, and they struggle with that they're good enough, right, to put it into themselves as a person. And so, put it into that with yourself, and then put it to work, right? Put it to work in your community, put it to work in investing, put that money to work. And I agree with you with debt is a conversation. Is one of the great reasons we wrote Money Shackles was because like the system of debt can be handcuffs, right? Go to school, go to more school, get in debt, buy a car, get in debt, buy a house, get in debt, and somehow you're going to overcome the cycle, right? You're going to overcome the wave. Nobody overcomes the tidal wave, right? It's going to do the damage that it's going to do. And so for me, it's really about utilizing debt as a tool for growing your wealth. And if you can utilize debt as a tool for growing your wealth, you're no longer a slave to the debt. But the moment debt is in control of you, it's handcuffing you and creating those shackles. So that's super valuable. As we talk about money. Money for me is a fun conversation. I look forward to getting you on here again. Brother, Etan and I are both, two of the speakers at the Investment Wealth Summit. For those of you listening to the podcast, we'll drop a link in there for you. You guys got to come. Some of the great, alternative minds in America are coming to share and talk and have these real fireside chats and fireside conversations about money. But there's also a lot of systematic tools that I just think the average American doesn't have. And so we're also going to have some great charities. They're going to be there and great companies that have vehicles and have open ways for people to invest and make money. So look forward to seeing you there, brother. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You too, brother. Really, thanks for having me today. Really great chatting with you, and to be continued.